What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Code with Parcel. I am Parcel, and today I want to show you how you can execute user inputted JavaScript code within your JavaScript code without having any kind of security issues. We're going to do that using the npm package I just published. It's an open source package called js-exec, and it lets you execute JavaScript and it lets you sandbox the code and only give it access to whatever you want to give it access to. So we'll just go over that. I'll show you how it works. It's going to be pretty simple, and I'm sure you all will love it. Alright everyone, this is the package I was talking about, js-exec. It lets you execute sandbox JavaScript. If you want to see the package, you can go to npm.js.com/package/js-exec. I'll make sure I'll put a link down below in the descriptions. But to show you a demo, I have this boilerplate that I've made. It's nothing crazy. There's a text area up here. There's execute button, and there's a console div, which we'll get to later in the video. But just to show you what I've done so far, I'm just updating this code state every time the text area changes with this simple function here. If you want to actually see the state updating, we can use the use effect, and I can do use effect, give it a callback, console log code every time code is updated. So now, once it loads out, I'll do hello, and we see that every time it gets updated, we're console logging the state. So that we know that we have the code inside the state, and that's all we actually need. So now I'm just gonna import my package, js-exec. And I'm gonna import it here as well, import exec from js-exec, and this exec function is actually what runs our code. So I'm gonna make it so that when we click on this button, it executes the code. So I'll just create a event handler. Let's call it exec code handler. It's a function, gets an event. It's probably like, should be mouse event. Let's just do any. We're not really coding this out. And every time that we get that, we want to do execute code, and we have this option parameter 2. So if you want to pass in an interceptor, you can pass it in here. If you don't know what interceptors are within the package, you can just come here and we have explanation on them. They're nothing crazy, they're just callback functions. But we don't want any interceptors. So I'll just run the code. This is going to give me a sandbox. So this is not actually running the code yet. This just creates a sandbox for us. And now I can run the sandbox here, and I can give it access to things that I want to give access to from my global state or the global scope or whatever I have here. So let's say I don't want to give it access to anything, so it doesn't have access to any kind of global variable or any variable here. Let's just see what happens. So I'll just take my handler, give it to this button. So I'm saying I'll click, just do whatever this function does, save it, and I can create maybe a variable. There's no output, so we don't really know. Let's say I want to console log this variable though. I'm gonna execute it, and bam, it crashes. It's saying it cannot read property log of undefined, which is what we expected, right? Because I did not want it to access console. So when we try to use console, console is undefined, so cannot read property log of console, which is undefined, which makes sense. But if I did want to give it access to the console, I can just pass console here, right? Console. Page refreshes. Now I can do console log hello. I can execute it, and bam, we see that the code actually executes in the console. Now, to show you the power of this library and what you can do with it, I've made this pseudo console here, which is why we have this div over here. And if I go to this console file, it's just a bunch of DOM manipulations to actually make this work. That has three functions: console.log, console.error, and console.clear. You can obviously just go explore what console has in the end and just implement whatever down here. But I've implemented these three, and p console stands for pseudo console. So this time, instead of giving it the console, I'm going to give it my pseudo console, right? Because I don't want it to actually access the console in the browser, but I want it to have access to a pseudo console that executes the code. So I'm just saying console is this now. So now when I execute the code, we actually see that it executes in my pre-made pseudo console that I did here. So with this, you can obviously create a bunch of things, a bunch of interfaces. Maybe a DOM, that would be pretty complicated, but you can obviously do that. You can create a console, you can create a file system if you're doing it in the backend, and you can pass in these stuff and slot them in instead of the actual global variable. And this could be very helpful if you're making like an educational module, or if you're just letting the users have some access to some things, but not really have access to the actual console or the file system, because that would be pretty dangerous. You can do all of that with this library. We're going to be coming up with more features. I'm going to add a better way of error handling very soon, and we're going to add a bunch of interceptors that allow you to write in TypeScript and execute TypeScript code within your code. So stay tuned, and that is it. Thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions.